I need you to make sure that you beat me until I run. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to beat you until you run.
Okay. So you said that you actually want to start with your grandmother, right? Like, so she was like the biggest influence of your life, if I may ask?
Yes. Yes. So before I speak, I would like to formally introduce myself.
Okay, yes, yes.
Okay, my name is Abongile Sonkosi, and that is how people know me as. But I would like to tell you more about myself. Ndinguzotsho, uNkwali, uMkhwanazi uBhuqula, uSihlubu uNtunzela. I am the granddaughter of uMamQhinebe uGuguwa, uDuka noMhlathi izithonga zithathu. Ndiyacamagusha, ndiyanqula ndithi makubethe usibele, ndede umnyama kuvele ukhanya. Ndiyacamagusha and I honor everybody who is listening. I would like to first talk about my grandmother.
Yes, please.
My story starts from when my great grandfather died, and my grandmother was left to raise her kids alone. My grandmother was 13 at the time, was the eldest daughter and her siblings. And then since now my great grandmother was a single parent. Someone had to go and help her work. So they said that since my grandmother is the eldest of the girls, they said to her that you need to go and work. They said to my great grandmother, Mam Gimani, you need to send this kid to be a domestic worker. She can't go back to school. Only the boys can continue, and her little siblings, other girls, can continue. And then that's how my grandmother became a domestic worker at the age of 13. And I think at that time she had so many dreams. She wanted to go to school. She wanted to, she wanted to be something, because in her family, people had not gone to school. There was a derogatory term that was used, amakaba. It means that people that have never been educated. So her family was one of those people who never went to school. And then, so now, later on in her life, she meets my grandfather. My grandfather comes from a family of educated people, and he's a principal at this time.
Wow.
And now they say to so while one when they were about to get married, the in-laws say to my grandfather, "But Darius, you cannot marry someone who's not been to school. You need to marry a teacher because you're a principal." My grandfather, who was very polite, he said to them, Am I opening school or am I building a family? I'm going to marry no matter because I'm building a family. And they got married and had 7 kids and 26 grandchildren that my grandmother raised.
Oh,
And I think that's where my story begins, with my grandmother. Because now, as I was growing up in the rural areas, my mother went to, my mother had to become a teacher also, so she had to work all the time. And I was raised by my grandmother and my grandfather. And I would sit with my grandmother and she would tell me stories of when she was growing up. And this was one of these stories. And she would sit with me and read because she was struggling to read at the time, but she would also teach me how to read. So that's where I began loving to read because my grandmother taught me with her grade 4, grade 5 education. She taught me how to read. And I could feel her passion of wanting to go to school. And that's where everything started for me. And I realized that at the time I didn't know, but I realized that a fire had been ignited in me.
wow. So, like, so you growing up with your grandmother and sharing the little moment that you actually shared with her. So you think that that actually contributed to most of the work that you do and most of the like your identity as well.
I know that it contributed to my identity. I know that it contributes to the work that I did because whenever people ask me, Abongile, why are you doing a PhD? Because people had told me that, Abongile, you are a professional student. When are you going to start with this? And they would make jokes about me. I understood. I understood my mission. I understood what I was here to do. Do you understand? I am doing this because of my grandmother. I'm doing this to honor her so that the things that she was never able to do, that she can do through me. I am doing this also for my daughter. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I'm doing this so that my daughter doesn't have to go outside to look for inspiration, to look for role models.
Wow. That's very true. That's very true. Because I think, like, especially in our African communities, we lack female role models. And then, like as women as well, growing up in your household, you kind of sometimes have to look from the out, to look at the outside actually to see the successful woman, somebody that you can actually look up to and all that. So, and it's really like inspiring that even though your grandmother was uneducated, she had she was still an inspiration and she instilled that so much values and so much tradition within you guys as well. And today you're actually like living your life because from the inspiration that you got from her.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow.
Exactly. And my mother became a principal as well. So I was like, my grandmother really inspired us. When she was growing up, she would tell me stories of when she was a young girl. And young girls get naughty and they get into fights, right? So she would say, when she's about to get into a fight with another girl, she would say, you know what? If we are going to do this, we need to do it properly. I need you to make sure that you beat me until I run. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to beat you until you run. And although I cannot fight, I know that with the challenges that I've faced, and even with facing myself when I'm going through these challenges, I've said to myself, and the challenges, you know what, we're going to do this and we're going to do it properly. I'm going to make sure that I beat you and you run. And that's how I've approached each and every challenge, and I've approached every version of myself that has run and, that has ran and left this version of me that needs to occupy the space.
Wow. That's very, very, very inspiring. Like that's such a I think a great mindset to have that whatever challenge is going to come your way, you are going to beat it and challenge it until it actually runs away. So, like, okay, you're being inspired by so many women that have been part of your life. So, do they like what does it mean to actually like be a woman, like for yourself, like in the African community, like a black woman or just a woman in general?
Yeah, I've, you know what, I've even tried to answer that question in my thesis where I have a whole 30 pages, a whole chapter on what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be black? So I felt the need to answer those questions. And in answering what does it mean to be a woman, for me, being a woman means having a voice. It means that you don't let people impose ideas on you. You don't get People don't get to put you in a box, and this is the box where women are supposed to go. This is a box where black women are supposed to go. In South Africa, when you read articles, they tell you that black women are at the bottom of the barrel, you know. And my yeah, and I think my purpose in being a woman is that I want to break those barriers. I want to change those narratives about women, in that with this my story does not start from victimhood. My story does not start from being at the bottom of the barrel, because I have dreams, I have hopes, I have purposes. I know what I'm here to do. It's not. It's not just that someone said, okay, go into this. I know why understand. So in my study, I even speak of women are positioned in society, but we're forgetting one thing is that women position themselves. They know how to position themselves, you know. And I remember in a presentation, I was presenting on what it means to be a woman, and I went back to Queen Zinga. I went back to these women in the pre-colonial times. I said, I don't want to start from colonial times because we always start to define women from colonial times, but we need to start from pre-colonial times. And I understand that those times were not all perfect, but then still, the women they could assert themselves. And if we are going to move forward into the future, we need to understand how we were like as women back then. You know, how do we occupy the spaces? How do we make ourselves heard? And that's what it means to me. It means to be heard. It means to have a voice.
Yeah, wow. Okay, like for us now who don't know history and who don't know actually how women actually lived, how were women positions like those times, like back in time? Like, are there any examples or?
Okay. I will start from my culture, you know. There's an article that I just read. It's called The Institution of Umakulu. It's the institution of grandmother. You know, in my culture, grandmother is an institution. She's an institution of wisdom. That's where you get your wisdom. Do you understand? Those elders, we respect elders up to a point where we respect them even when they are no longer here. We gain wisdom from them as our ancestors. Do you understand? We have the institution of Utabawo. Utabawo is your aunt from your father's side, and that is an institution because she's supposed to be strong. She's supposed to hold the family, and she's supposed to be part of the decision making. And in the olden days, she was part of the decision making. You know, even umakhulu grandmother, she was part of decision making. Nothing can happen in the household without knowing. And then even if you go back to other cultures, you can understand that there were female what did they call them, female sons or male daughters. I think it was male daughters. And you just understand how much power was placed on these women. We even if we go back to Queen Zinga, we can understand like the impact that she had. She was a woman, but the impact that she had and the role that she played. And there are many other women if you go back in history, or even. And what I like to do is I don't like to look at the women that in the valorized narratives, you know, they are there but I look even for the women whose names did not make it to the narrative, to the master narrative that has been going around. You know, I look at those women and how they position themselves. You know, we speak about silence. You know, the power of silence. And South Africa, there was the TRC. I read an article that there was the TRC. The wives of the men that were killed there were silent, and people were like, "Oh, why are they silent?" But in silence, there's power. There is power in your silence when you don't say anything, when you just keep quiet and you don't say anything. You leave the other person to decide what they want to decide, or you leave the space open. But there is power in silence. But for me, it has not been a type of feminism that I've been using, or a type of tool that I've been using. But I do know that even our parents used that. You know, in Xhosa we say that, you know, you know, I've decided to keep quiet because there's power in that. You just keep grounded in your own space.
Wow. Wow. Like when you say there's power in silence, like now, if anything, like if maybe something is like what you mean, and because I'm just trying to understand it. So, like when something, maybe when something is imposed on you or something happens to you, and then you decide to just keep quiet, not to react, is that like the silence you are talking about, or like what do you mean? Because I would love to understand it, like in, you know.
As okay, but as I said that for me, okay, uh, can I touch on the different feminisms that I think? There's this one feminism that I avoided for a while. It's an African feminism. I avoided it for a while, right? It's called ecofeminism. And when I saw it, I was like, no, ecofeminism. I just left it because of what I thought it meant. I was like, okay, in the N word, or so I just left it like that, and I didn't look at it. But during a conversation with someone, I said, no, let me go back and check that, and I checked it, and it means the feminism of negotiation. You know, it means give and take, ne? And then in my language, you say ina, ete, give and take. And knowing how to move in the space, knowing how to navigate the space, knowing when to keep silent and knowing when to speak. Because when you are keeping silent, ne, it is that time when you are collecting your strength, you are empowering yourself. Silence sometimes doesn't mean that you are stupid, or you are being ignorant, or you don't want to engage, but it means that I know when I'm going to engage with this. I know how I'm going to engage with this. I have to plan a strategy of how I'm going to navigate this space. How am I going to negotiate my way in this space? Because if you just go in and just respond to a situation, or just it's not going to be the same as when you just sit down and strategize and being intentional. I think silence is about being intentional. What are my intentions about this? What do I want to gain out of this? And people will see you as like, oh, okay, she's keeping quiet, or she's not engaging with patriarchy, she's not engaging with classism and whatnot. But in your silence, you're like, okay, what is it? What do I need to do? Like, what version of me needs to come out of this? And once you found your way of how to navigate the space, and then that's when you decide to move. I think I think I'll give you an example from a participant. I remember getting into the space with a participant. I wish I could take you and put you there in the conversation. I wish I can take you and put you there in the conversations that I've had with these powerful women. She is a spiritually gifted woman, right? She remains silent about her spiritual gifts in the space. Do you understand? She didn't tell everybody that, hey, I'm spiritually gifted and this is how I navigate the space, but she was just silent. And the way she speaks about it, she says, I am, I am inspired by Harriet Tubman and how Harriet Tubman moved the space. She says Harriet Tubman was an old woman, but she freed so many slaves, right? And it is about the way that she moved, that she freed herself, but then something told her that no, no, you need to go back and you need to free all of those other people, right? And then she Harriet Tubman freed all of those other people. And now, in the way that she speaks about in the way that she speaks about her research or her PhD journey, is that in her silence of not telling people that, hey, everybody to know that I am spiritually gifted, but she moved silently. She says, I don't want, because academia has so many rules, right? And regulations. So if you speak out and say, guys, can you please make space for women that are spiritually gifted, and the space open up for indigenous people, it just causes too much just too much noise. I decided to move silently in that space. I was like this so that they don't catch me. I was like this. And she said, in my journey, or in my final PhD, I had music there. Each chapter had songs that are in my language. I was able to move the way that I wanted to move because of my silence.
Wow. Wow. I'm actually like blown away right now because I think people take especially silence as as a form of a weakness
Mm.
at many a time, but I just realized how silence can be such a strong tool as well.
Mm,
because you will leave the other person wondering of what you're thinking about, what is your next move, or how
mm,
you feel about a certain stuff. And I
mm.
think that is like that's a strong tool actually.
Yes, and to add on to that story, I think that the day I had the interview with her, and then I think a few months after that we had a conference. Now you see that other lady was silent, and she said that I wanted to open up space for other indigenous women in academia. I want to open up space, for them to move, so, because I've already moved. Now, going to a conference, and you know how conferences can be, academic conferences can be very, serious. You understand? And then there was this woman that was presenting how the academic space is not safe for is an unsafe space for indigenous people. And now the thing is, because this first woman has already moved in the space, and even in her silence, she's moved, gotten to the other side. What did that do? That opened up space for another woman now to move. And the second woman now was not silent. She came into the space, and we all see that this woman is a traditional healer. She's a spiritual person, and she came in the space, and she had her incense with her, and then she had drums, and the drums started to beat during a conference, because people are serious. This is the topic, this is the situations. She had someone beating the drums, go 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 go, and we started singing, and then she said, sing, sing, I want you guys to sing and clap, and we started clapping. There are different people in the room who started clapping. She's saying it, she's saying. And then she said, and you could feel, if you are a spiritually gifted person, you could feel her ancestors just moving into the space, coming into the space, and how she moved. And she said, you know what, the the theme for that conference was shaking the table. I don't think she took the table. She took the whole table and she threw it out, because she was like she was like, this table is not good enough, because it's not a safe space indigenous people, for indigenous women. So let's rather take it out, because it's crooked, because other people are sitting on high chairs, other people are sitting on toddler chairs, and we're saying we're going to negotiate and shake this table. Who will be shaking the table? So that woman was proving a point, you know that, what, I can do this, because the university that I'm in, it was never designed for black people. Do you understand? And the history, it says that black people were only made to be to serve there, to be the servants, to cut the grass, and so on. Do you understand? So what that woman did was very powerful, is that, she just entered the space just like that, and then when people were asking her questions now after that, because I was also one of the people who raised questions, and she said, I'm not going to answer any questions. She left the silent like that. Do you see how silence is? She answered a few questions, but some of she gave out her presentation, but with answering questions, she did not. She left the space blank like that. Do you understand? She's like, no, I need to go. I need to catch a taxi. I have to go. It's 5 o'clock. And we were left like that. And her silence left a space for debate, because silence sometimes leaves a space for debate. We were debating with each other. So the whole night we're debating. Guys, how did you feel? Like during what was happening there, and people were giving out different views. So maybe had she not been silent and answered our questions, maybe there would not have been space for us to really question, really challenge our own beliefs about what she's doing.
Exactly, exactly. Speaking of now, once we are on spirituality, like okay, we are now there's so much, especially we are now in the religion world, and there's so much that is happening. Like, do you think like as an African, do you think that spirituality like in our traditional, it's still relevant in this age of era that you're living in?
Do I think that it is still relevant?
Yeah, relevant.
I think that it is very relevant,
Yeah.
very relevant, because because when we speak about intersectionality, I love the people who are African women who've spoken about intersectionality. And they say that one, intersectionality is about race, class, and gender. But they also say intersectionality is about the past, the present, and the future. We cannot know who we are if we don't know the past. And sometimes the past is linked to our spirituality. Do you understand? Who were we before everything that happened? And now our present, what we are going to teach our kids, what we are also practicing. Let me go into African feminism and my research. I remember writing in my research saying, I think I was quoting Amina Mama, I'm not sure. And I said, as I come into this space, I'm not just a body, I'm not just a mind, but I'm also a spirit. And the human experience or the academic experience needs to encompass all of that. Because if I was just a mind, I would just take out my brain and, throw it into the classroom, so that they can take that part of me. So if they are going to take me, if I'm going to exist in this space, I have to exist as I am. Do you understand? I have to come with everything that I am. So African feminism even speaks to your spirituality. It speaks to who you are. Do you understand? And do you understand that when I introduced myself, I was reciting my clan names, and those clan names I can in my clan names, that's where my ancestors are located. Those are the people that have lived before me. Do you understand? And every time I present, even at a conference, I will recite my clan names. I will say a short prayer. It's like a short prayer. I honor my ancestors, but I don't only honor my ancestors. I honor I honor the people that are in the room, and I know that when they come in the room, they come in with their ancestors. Let me say one more thing, that I remember being in Amsterdam Dutch conference, right? It was the Black Dutch conference, and it was last year. And then there was a lady that was singing there. She was singing a song for her grandmother, and she said that this song was inspired by her grandmother. She's mixed race, but she's never been to Africa and to where her mother was born, right? And I think she was actually born in Namibia, and yes. I mean, her mother was born in Namibia, and she says that, but I feel that, I'm connected to my grandmother. Hey, this lady started singing this song. Everybody was just taken by the song, her voice, everything. And while she was singing the song, hey, I'm like, oh my God, Granny is here. Granny is here. Granny is proud. Do you understand? And she's here with her people. And I'm like, oh my God, do I tell her? What do I do? What do I do? And I was like, no, I'm going to tell her. I went and I told her that Granny is here and she's proud. She's never met her grandmother. And I said, continue singing this song, because this is how you connect with your grandmother. You can't, there's nothing that can tear you apart, even if you haven't met her. She's here. And And then after that, I remember she said, "Okay, let me invite you to my table." And there were other people, other African women that were sitting in that table, and they said, "You know what? It was me being grounded in my spirituality that has led me to where I am today. Those people are doctors. Those people are professors. Do you understand?" So it was my spirituality that grounded me, which is why even me, I'm grounded in my spirituality, because I know that the topic that I'm doing, I I I I would have never thought about it before. Yes, I've tried to study Black women, but it has just gone like this. But this time I felt aligned. I felt aligned. with my spirituality, and I just went in, and the topic and the study went from just a simple topic to now it is alive. It is about women's lives, you know.
Yeah. That's very, and because like why I asked that question is that especially I think people of my generation, like the young people, we tend to believe that tradition and when it comes to traditional like spirituality in general, is actually Satanism. Like we don't, yeah, we don't believe in that, and we are moving away actually and losing our tradition and losing our culture. So
I like what you're saying. I like what you're saying. I like the satanism part, like, how people are demonizing their own ancestors, But to come to think of it, that sitting here and you sitting there, you are an ancestor. You are going to be someone's ancestor. The life that we live, you know, the life that we live today, it means that once we are gone, oh, we are going to give wisdom to our kids. Do you understand? That's how I understand myself. But the woman that presented on the space, being unsafe for indigenous people, she spoke about that, and she said, I understand that some of you will demonize this, but we are speaking about decolonization. We are speaking about other ways of knowing. We are speaking about other ways of being. There's not only one way of being. And once we start to respect our way of being, there's a lot that will come out. There's a lot of knowledge that will come out of this. There's not one way of thinking about things. I'm also reading stuff around Australia and New Zealand. Even there are indigenous people. And what they do is that they incorporate their indigenous beliefs and their research. So they research about their traditions. And they will say that maybe a supervisor will say, oh, but even that power of silence, even going back to that power of silence, a supervisor will say, oh, but you should have asked more questions about this. This thing needs to be explicit because in the Western way of knowing, things should be like this. And then I think um, that PhD candidate says that she was talking about when the women in their culture are giving birth, right? They have to take the placenta and go bury it, right? And then the professor was asking, what happens if you do not bury that placenta? And then the grandmother said, no, we don't even want to talk about what is going to happen. We remain silent about that because there's power in words, right? We remain silent because when you remain silent, you don't create anything. They believe that with your words, you can create something. So they don't want to create uh, with those words of what is going to happen. So what I'm trying to say to you is that this thing is not just in Africa. It's also other parts of the world. It's going on in other parts of the world where people are going back to their spirituality. People are going back to their own ways of knowing. Why is it that African spirituality should be demonized? When for so many years before colonialism came, our people had been living like that. And for me, in my culture, even after that, even post-colonialism, kept our ways. We've kept our ways to ourselves, and we've continued to do the things that, are grounded in our own spirituality.
wow, that's really just very true. Now I'm actually remembering, I think, growing up as well with my grandfather as well. Like you ask him, like he will tell you, don't do certain stuff, you should not do that. But then we ask, why don't we do that? Why must we not do it? And he will just like, no, just don't do it. Just don't do it.
I like
And we are
that. I like that because my grandmother used to say the same thing, and they used to call us "onokuza kuthini." Oh, these kids are, what will happen? What will happen? That's your name now. You're what will happen? If we do this, because we're always asking these questions, but we did not understand the wisdom behind their silence. We did not understand the wisdom behind the way they moved.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Like in your like during your this discussion, you spoke so much, you mentioned so much about feminism, feminism. What is feminism?
Oh, yes, feminism. Feminism is an ideology. It is a way of being, right? It is the way of occupying space. It is the way of asserting yourself in the world, you know. And every people have different versions and different definitions of feminism. And I don't think there's just one definition. You know, even Chimamanda Adichie said that, you know, she was asked to define feminism and she defined it in her own way. And there is a dictionary definition. But for me, feminism is about occupying space. You know, you had Zosmi Tunzi. She was Miss Universe. She spoke occupying space, you know, being true to yourself, being who you are, and not being apologetic about who you are. Do you understand? You know, it reminds me of my journey with feminism. Should I continue with my?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please do continue. Please do continue.
So I started I started off with wanting to become a psychologist, of course, and then I was like, no, I want to become a sociologist. So there were courses there that we took, right? And unfortunately for me, I decided to major in something else, right? Let's start it there. I decided to major in something else, and I couldn't do feminism, so I had to teach myself feminism. You know, read books and then I wanted to go and apply it back home, and you would see that, it's, you know, it doesn't really fit in. And even when you try to fit it in, feminism was like a garment that you had to try and fit, you know. If it's too small, you have to lose weight. If it's too big, you have to gain weight, you know. Western feminism, that's how it felt for me because I had to leave other parts outside in order to fit into it. I went into a black feminism and I read Bell Hooks, I read who was my favorite, but I read these books and I still realized that there was a gap, you know, that was still there, that was not being you know, closed. And then I remember then I think 2021, in my big age, taking the first course of African feminism. That was the first time I heard of African feminism. And I I remember, and I was taking it with a Scottish sociology department. So everybody was coming from different parts of the world. So it was a different experience for me. So I've taken the course twice, and it was being facilitated by white women. And I was like, oh my God, even so, but the way that she facilitated it, she says that knowledge making is not only, you know, you don't just get knowledge from you know how people gather data from interviews, all of these surveys but she said that even the even our dreams are places where knowledge is situated, even the conversations that we're having, you know, and even black feminism, you know, uh, the way that the way that she unpacked it for me, it was amazing. And that the people in the community are not just rats in a lab. You can just test out your theories and then go. Do you understand the quick data approach that is used in research? But those are collaborators. Do you understand? So that was so beautiful. And then after that, obviously, it was in a short course. And then I went and I taught myself feminism, the different strains of feminism. I was like, no, it's not just one African feminism. There are so many feminisms. And, you know, I went into Ogotipe Mola when she speaks about how African women carry these six mountains on their backs. And she says, even though they carry these six mountains, right? You know, these include colonialism, patriarchy, and those things, and the woman herself. We like carry those mountains. But even though African women carry these mountains, they are able to move in the space. You know, these mountains do not overpower them, you know, they occupy spaces with these, they break barriers, you know. It just shows. how powerful African women are. Then the other feminism, I'm going to go into all of them, but I've already spoken about necofeminism, the way we navigate the spaces. And then I remember going to an African feminism's conference. They said it was an intimate session, and then they say people must tell their stories of feminism and how they got to know feminism. And I'm like, how did you know that you were a feminist? I was like, I don't have anything to tell. And people were telling stories about how I read a book's book and how I did this and how I did this. And for me, I at the time I was like, but it was not because of reading a book. For me, it was not reading a book. It was not about, even though I had gone and but there was a thirst inside me too that led me. It's not that I saw a book and I was like, oh, this is feminism. I was like, ooh, I want to be a feminist, but um, so I couldn't really locate where my own feminism came from. So I went to the lady who was facilitating the session. I said to her that I feel like that's not how my story goes, you know, story goes. And she said, they're feminists and they're matriarchs, and matriarchs are born with it. And then it reminded me of the story that my mother told me of how I was uh, that I was born in a very small clinic in the rural areas. And so my mother was in labor, and the nurse was, like, she was like, okay, I'm just going to take something, and then I'll come back and help you give birth. And then when the nurse came back, I was already there, like, you know, my mom said, you pushed your way into the world. You understand? So that's when I realized I was born a matriarch. I was born with this. I was born with this power, you know, because I took it from my grandmother, I took it from my mother, and here I am, right? And it's something that my daughter is going to have. She's going to be a matriarch. She's strong, like she has,
Wow. That's I see. And then you are speaking of African feminism and then black feminism. Like, is there a difference between African feminism and black feminism?
yes, there is a difference. We always go back to stories, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as a young girl, I watched this movie, The Color Purple. Do you remember it?
I know, no, no, no.
Okay, you have to watch The Color Purple. The Color Purple was talking about Celie, this young woman that had been abused by her father, and then he married her off to someone else, and he sold off her children, gave away her children. He raped her and made her pregnant and gave away her children to other people. And while she was married to this person, she had no power. She's poor, that's class. She's a black woman, that's race, gender, she's a woman. So now she's stuck in this in this struggle. And I saw myself, like, obviously I had not gone through what Celia had gone through, but I understand that we as black women, we deal with issues of class, race, and gender, right? But then what the difference was is that the context in America is different from the context in South Africa. Let me speak about South Africa, you know, and in South Africa there's a history of colonialism. Do you understand? We deal with culture, culture is something that does oppress women at times, and which is why people tend to say that but these African feminisms, they are weak, they have so many gaps within them, so you can't use them. All theories have gaps in them, but you use it regardless of that. You find ways, you negotiate your space, your way into this theory. So why can't you do it with African feminism? And the difference with that is that we are women that have been colonized, and we are women that deal with cultural issues, in laws, and all of those things. So our contexts are not are different. I do speak about this in my thesis, that I just go through I go through Black feminism and how it has opened up space for Black women to speak And we should be grateful for that, that women had space to speak. But at the end of the day, it is not that African women were not feminists. It is just that they didn't call themselves feminists. You understand? Our contexts are very different. Even the women in the diaspora, so their experiences are different, and how they decide to navigate the space, and how they decide to engage with feminism, whether they decide to engage with Black feminism or African feminism, it is completely up to them. Which is why I say my feminism is not your feminism. Do you understand? Because there are differences within these intersectionalities, within these identities, or these categories that we occupy. Do you understand? One deals with these other issues, but the other women deal with their own issues. So in Africa, yeah, we're dealing with a different.
I see, I see. Like when I hear a lot of people talking about feminism, 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 which is like, and what I got to understand is that like I think like the main objective of feminism is actually to kind of for women to be independent, for women to be able to speak up, and to women to actually be able to get spaces that they were never able to. But then I also just believe that I don't know if we are taking it overboard, and then because now we have like we come across feminism, we're like, no, I don't need a man, or I don't need a man. And then you find like women, especially now young women, who are like, okay, they are posting pictures in bikinis like on social media, or they become sex workers, and then you call that feminism. Is that also like a form of feminism, or like what is it?
Okay. As I said, your feminism is not my feminism. And people have decided to occupy the space in different ways. People have decided to be heard in different ways. And I think it is up to them to decide, is this feminism? Is this, and because I've seen conversations, right, on social media where people post such pictures, and a person decides that I'm going to dance naked to make money, something like that. And that and people would say, oh, this woman has set back feminism 100 years back, and I don't know how to engage with such conversations, because of me understanding my feminism and what it means to me, and opening up the space for other people to explore what do they mean by this feminism. Do you understand? And going back to the issue of being independent women, not wanting men, and I've been in that space where I'm like, yeah, and hence I'm saying people need a space to explore their feminine. Do you understand? I've gone through that of saying, yeah, we don't need men, but then after reading about these feminisms, that at the end of the day, I went back to read about, in fact, African spirituality. It is connected. Everything is connected. I went back to read about African spirituality, and I read that the the man and the woman, they are like this. They work together. They have to work together. But at the end of the day, we know that there are these things that are happening, gender-based violence and all of these things. But at the end of the day, we have to sit together and negotiate. I don't know who is the Black feminist in America that wrote about this, that the family, and I think there was a professor that said that African feminism is not enough. African feminism is not enough. She was looking at me like this. I'm an African feminist. I am a professor. But I'm telling you, African feminism is not enough without the family. We need to we need to work together, Black men and Black women. We cannot just leave men out of the conversation. Men need to join this conversation, and work out a way, negotiate, navigate okay. I think I, I think an example of this is culture, how women feel like they are oppressed by culture. And I remember doing a study on access to land, women and access to land, and telling traditional leaders, the kings in one of the kings, that you know what, women are oppressed and culture oppresses women. They said that, yeah, um, women. It's not what they said; it's what I wrote. I wrote that women need to engage with culture. Culture is fluid. Culture is flexible. In that culture serves the people that are there at that time. You know, it's the culture that served my ancestors is not the same culture that is going to serve me. Yes, I'm going to learn the things that are there in that culture, but then it has to work for me. Right now, we have women that work that are independent. So how can we navigate culture so that it can work hand in hand with these women? So women need to engage with culture and speak out.
I see, I see. That's actually very true. I hope I did not cut you off.
Eh?
I hope I did not cut you off.
No, no, no. I'm just thinking about these whole conversations and how relevant they are. So, and by the way, I was told that there's a surprise between me and you. So I wanted to, yeah, maybe at the end, then you can tell me because, yeah.
No, 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 no. I actually like I think like the surprise was just that I believe in feminism like at an extent because of the feminists that I've actually been exposed to.
Mm.
Especially you go, I don't need a man, we are women, we must be independent and such and such and such. And then I like, okay, feminism, it like serves us in a certain way, but then I just believe that sometimes we take it overboard,
Mm.
especially I think people of my generation.
That we take it overboard.
Yeah.
And don't you see how it is important then to always I to always learn from the wisdom of our great our grandparents or our other people that linked before us, because I always look at my grandfather and my grandmother. And my grandmother was a strong woman. Like, I told you about, I told you about how she, you know, and my grandfather was an introvert. Oh, he was so quiet. But in the household, you could see my grandmother did not work, my grandfather was working. But just because my grandfather was working, it did not mean that he was providing. It did not mean that my grandmother did not have a say. If there's a decision that is going to be made in the household, it has to go through the channels, and she's one of those channels. And then when the decision is made, they make it together. Do you understand? Yeah, we can decide that, okay, I'm not going to get married, I'm not going to have kids. That is your choice, right? I want to be independent. I want to do this. I want to do this. That is your choice. People are allowed to do that. But in how we do this feminism, we need to be cognizant. We always need to be cognizant of what are we doing, what are we creating with this. Do you understand? Saying that how we don't need men, we're throwing them aside, but they need to be part of this conversation. So my grandmother and grandfather worked together like this. Do you understand? So that's what we need to learn from them.
That's very true. That's very true. So, if you are like given an opportunity to talk to a young African woman or a young African child, like what would you say like to them? Girls, like African girls, or just yeah.
uh, uh, I think different versions of me have had chances to speak with with young girls. Do you understand? Because I'm always part of these NGOs that are helping young girls, and I've said different things with the version that I was then, the version that I am now, because I'm already a doctor, right? I am already, even though I haven't finished my PhD, but that's not where my identity lies. But I would say to I would say what Zosini had said. I would tell them to occupy. the space, you know. I would tell them to not be apologetic about who they are. You know, being a black woman in South Africa, you 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 have to be apologetic for a lot. Apologetic for for the color of your skin. You know, you're a black woman, you are, you know, that thing, you're bottom of the barrel, you know. And people always say, black child, you are on your own. Black child, you're not on your own. You are not on your own. You have women that have walked before you. You have women that have paved the way, that have broken barriers, you know. You know, with Mama Winnie Mandela, how we know we were sleeping on her legacy. We were sleeping on her legacy. But then the minute we started to wake up and see who she was, do you understand? We have those women like that who broke those barriers. So what we are doing as women in these spaces, I'm not only here for myself to just become a doctor and wear the red gown. Just like the woman that I interviewed, I'm here to open space for you so that you can move differently, so that I can go back and take you, so that you go to your destination, whatever purpose that you have in this space, with the dreams in your hands. I don't want them to, you know, to disappear. I want to open up space for you so that even you, when you occupy this space, I want you to open up space for many women, you know. When you get up, for me, when I get up and speak, I need women to understand. I need for hundreds of women to get up and be like, "Oh my God, the way she has lived, her life, the way she's handled challenges. It means that I can also do it. She did it, and I can also do it." Do you understand? I want them to know that with every challenge, a different version of you is born. You ask yourself, what is this teaching me? What version of me is supposed to be born with this challenge? Do you understand? We are strong. You know, we say in South Africa, "Watinda bafazi, watinda umuntu." You know, you strike a woman, you strike a rock, but also you strike a woman, you strike an egg. You know, because we are also vulnerable. Because if we always show up as these strong women, there's no space for our vulnerabilities, and the environment is not going to change. Society is not going to change. So we're like, they can take it. You know, let's not change anything. So I'm also an egg, even though I'm a rock. You know, so society needs to change for me.
That's very true. Thank you so much, Abongile. I like it's a woman like you that actually I think gave us the inspiration to continue to do what you do and then to just believe that we actually our dreams are valid and that we actually we are able and capable of taking up spaces in places that other women like that came actually before us were never able to. So thank you so much and please keep inspiring us. Like is there anything that I left out that you like want to yeah.
I just feel that this because you like it feels like now you are concluding and it feels like it's like is it over now? Are we going already? You know, but I just want to say that you know in this space that we are in, right? For me, the academic space, it feels like obviously, as I said, it feels like a garment that you have to wear and you have to, you know. And most of the time, I said to my supervisor that I don't want to do things the way that other people have done them. Do you understand? I remember I forgot about one of my participants who was writing a paper on township economics. Townships, do you know what townships are?
Yeah. The suburb, yeah.
No, not the suburb,
Yeah,
the
I know the suburb, but the township, yeah, we yeah, like yeah, so
yeah,
just so it.
exactly like you, yeah. So in the township, people think differently about economics. And then there was this this bad narrative of, oh, people in the townships don't know how to use money and their economics is bad. And she said she's actually in the Netherlands and she's studying there. And she said that I want to write a paper so that they can see that a black woman wrote this paper And the way that she speaks about is kotane. I'm not sure how to translate that. The young men that wear expensive clothing and show off all these, brand names. And she said that it is because black people were deprived at that time in the apartheid times of these things. But then as she speaks about them, you can hear the passion. And she just, it's like, it's like you're listening to a kwaito song, a piano song. The way she speaks, she's like, I want it to come out like this. And as you are reading her paper, you can see, like you can even imagine. Do you understand that the context is coming from a South African woman? It's, and then that's where I got the idea of I want them to know that an African woman wrote this. I want them to know that I wrote this. Do you understand? Which is why I started using African proverbs, Xhosa proverbs, you know, because I need them to know that I was present in that, I say that even when I'm interviewing this woman, I'm present. When I am listening to the recordings, I'm present. I'm writing the findings, I am present. I'm always present in this. So my story needs to be part of this. So that's why it needs to be clear that I was here, you know? So yeah, African women need to take up space.
Wow. I'm like very inspired today and I learned so much in such a short time. So thank you so much. Like, is there a way we can actually be of help to you? Like, is there any work that you are working on or any project that you actually like maybe want to like other people to check out?
At the moment, I'm still working on my PhD. It's taking out most of my time because, yeah, at the moment. But once I am done, because I think my whole thing is I want to go back I want to go back into higher education. I want us to do it differently. I want us to do it differently so that it can be a safe space for everybody.
Like, how can people reach out to you? Because you have so much. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I am on LinkedIn, so people can reach out. I'll call myself a dinosaur because still trying to, you know, I do have an Instagram page. I do have an Instagram page, but then I'm really not active because this thing takes up your life, take up your life. Because I remember my supervisor saying that, oh, you need to go and do conferences now. You need to put your name out there. So for me, the main thing that I want to do after this is to write a book. To write a book about my story, to write a book, not just the thesis. The work is on its own, but to really after this, I think that's where you come in. When I write that book, you know, about my journey and how everything, and even incorporate these stories of this in a deeper level, so that we just understand them from a theoretical and empirical, sense, but we understand them like these are real life experiences. These are people's lives. So on LinkedIn, I am there. I Well, I don't have a Facebook page, but I think LinkedIn is where people can connect with me.
Okay, we will just put your links or your initials actually in the description of the video. And then as well, please don't hesitate to reach out when you write your book, and we will be happy actually to have you back or any project you will be working on. We will be happy to have you back. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Miss Afrodile.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's discussion. And I hope that you enjoyed it the same way I did. And I hope that you found it actually productive. So, if you are looking forward to watching more episodes, such exciting and inspiring episodes, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, turn on your notification button for you to always be notified whenever we post a new episode. So, thank you so much. I sign out.